Councilman Burns is absent. Councilman Scanlon.
Present.
And President Strawn is absent. So right now we don't have a quorum.
Okay. Well, wait a minute.
Okay, Councilwoman Riley is present. We have a quorum.
Okay. So let's open pages 79, 94, 95, 99, 100, and 226. Ms. Berling's here.
Oh,
How are you? Can you get closer to the microphone, please?
how's that?
Thank you. So just give us the highlights of your budget, if you would, please.
Okay. Well, I noticed the planning commissioners, we have a, full contingent of them. And so the beginning of this is just discussing the member service fees, and we pay them. It has been increased to $575 annually for COD and zoning board, as well as the planning commission.
Julia, hang on for a second. The mayor in this year's budget increased all the board and commissions across the board, since it's all going to be in person and he's having a hard time retaining people.
Mhm.
He increased it. I think it was like $100 or $150.
Yeah. It was
It went from
170.
400 to 575
Okay.
per person.
Which will do a lot to retain members. Do you want me to just keep going on?
Yeah, what page?
Yeah, just give us the highlights, if you would, please. Thank you.
Okay, you got it. So the main budget for my office, the only real difference is our housing safety specialist is grant funded right now. That grant is ending at the end of December, and I've requested that she be retained and her salary be picked up by the city, which was agreed to initially before we came to speak with y'all. Let's see, there's no other change there. If there's questions about anything, mostly my budget has stayed relatively the same. I am requesting again that we have a professional services line funded, and that we use to provide surveys for projects, engineering analysis for grant applications. We just had to really scrape to find money to pay for a survey of a parking lot that we're having redesigned into a green lot. So that would really be helpful to have that added. Under subscription dues and memberships, we pay the annual fee for the New York State Planning Federation membership, which covers all of our commissioners and provides free training for them. So it's $300 to cover Planning Commission, Zoning Board, and the Committee on Architecture and Urban Design, which is a very good, as well as our staff members as well. I don't believe there have been any changes or drastic increases.
All right, thank you. Is there questions? Councilmember Friedman, please.
Thank you. Chair,
Whatever.
Count- Vice Chair Scanlon, thank you.
That's fine.
Thanks, Tom.
You-
Hi, Dr. Burling, how are you?
Fine, how are you?
Okay, I had just a couple of questions. Okay, hold on one second. Okay, so I noticed that there are two lines for board member services, and both of them have no money having been spent in 2022. Is that paid out at the end of the year? Is that why both of
Yeah.
those are zero? Okay. And so my next question was, hang on, sorry, I did make notes, but I have to find second. Oh, I was wondering why there is now a $1,000 line for uniforms when it looks like there has not been in previous years.
That had been in our equipment line. And we're moving it, creating a uniform line, which my staff is in the field a lot and we're questioned occasionally if their badge isn't visible. So visible outerwear, hats, jackets. We had an incident a few years ago where they were.
Well,
So we're that's it, right there.
okay.
Yeah.
And I had one more question. Oh, okay. So on page 100, I'm looking at the dues and memberships.
Mhm.
So it says there's APA membership, there are only, it's listed as 4, whereas
Mhm.
the previous board memberships were 7. Is that the
Oh.
same? Can you explain why that's
Yeah,
listed as 4?
Absolutely. This is the American Planning Association membership for the 4 planners we have on my staff. So it's not for the boards or commissioners, it's just for staff. It's a professional membership.
Okay, that
Is-
makes sense. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Councilmember Riley, please.
Thank you for that. I apologize for not being settled when we started, but I did hear that there was an across the board increase in what? Can that be repeated?
Yep, that was for our commission. Well, was it for the whole city?
Yep.
Check. Okay, it's for the commissioners. For
So all of our boards have seen an increase of what amount per participant?
From 400 to 575.
Thank you.
that's the annual. Okay.
Councilwoman Freeman, the other question that you asked, some people do have the rights to put it in quarterly, but most put it in yearly.
And if there's no other questions, we have the fee schedule. We requested a new fee for the zoning compliance letters. Previously it was a free service and we're requesting a $10 fee for that. We're inundated. It is now mandated by banks and mortgage companies that properties have a compliance letter. And it takes time for my zoning officer to review the property, go to the site, take a picture, meet with the assessor's office. There's involved. So we requested that fee. I think that's what we need to be proposed.
Councilmember Friedman, please.
Thank you, Councilman Scanlon. So I have a question about actually not the new fee, but the vacant property fee.
Mhm.
So I see a vacant property with no development plan is $500. That's annually?
Mhm.
Okay, and a vacant property with a development plan is $50. Presumably that's to incentivize
Yep.
someone to create a development plan.
Right.
I'm wondering, how is the development plan enforced? Like, once someone submits it, how do we ensure that they're actually following
Right.
that plan?
Our vacant property officer ensures that the plan is actually implemented. He verifies that the building has been occupied and returned back into service. And if there's a change in, if there's a development plan that it goes along with it, then he ensures that goes to plan zoning board. He refers it to us for that, but that's how it's tracked.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Councilmember Riley, please.
Just to clarify, I do see the zoning compliance letter change. Once this is approved, when will that be implemented?
2023.
Okay, and that will be posted and they'll be notified of the.
Yep,
Okay.
yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Ms. Burley? Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you.
Mr. Shaker, so I'm understanding, all the department heads saw 400 to 575 increase.
Yes.
I hadn't heard about that before. Maybe I missed something. All right, thank you. All right. On to Terry with, I'm sorry, yeah.
You
I'll
guys
take
have
a-
to make a motion to move
will.
the line, the page.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm new at this, so I'll take a motion to, accept line 79, 94, 95, 99, 100, and 226.
Motion to move pages 79, 94, 95, 99, 100, and 226. Oh,
Right.
Right.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Have a second on that, please?
Second,
Thank you. All in favor?
Hi.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. Okay, we're on to Terry now. Let's open page 1.
Councilman Scanlon,
Yes.
when we did page 226, all we did was the planning fees.
Okay,
Just that portion.
thank you.
Chuck, that'll be reflected in the minutes.
All right, so let's open page 1, page 22, page 213 through 217. So if you go over the highlights in your in the budget, please. Thank you.
Good afternoon. On page 1, it just adjusted base proportionments for the 2023 budget. Homestead is 52.1 and non-homestead is 47.9. Any questions?
On page 1, one thing that's, make sure everyone's aware of, we posted the city taxable value and the county taxable value as of September 12th. When we actually do the final budget, it will be at the time that you guys approve it, or
All right, thank you. Any questions on it? Council Member Friedman, please.
thank you, Councilman Scanlon. Hi, Terry, how are
Hi.
you?
Fine.
I am wondering if you could explain, I don't know how these numbers are calculated, but I was curious why the homestead adjusted base proportion went up and the non-homestead one went down from 2022 to 2023.
It's basically based on a complicated spreadsheet that we have to do, and we compared the previous roll year. So it's, if you want to see the spreadsheets, you can come to my office, but they're pretty complicated, and it just happened that figures based on assessments.
Okay, that's why you're the expert and I'm asking you the question. Thanks.
Other questions on page 1? Let's move to page 22, please.
Basically, my budget stayed the same, except that I reduced the personnel services from a second full-time tax aide down to a part-time clerk. And half of that reduction was carried over to commercial consultants for half of that reduction, because we have 2,000 plus commercial properties in the city of Binghamton. And we have a lot of unique development coming, so it's nice to be able to consult with a commercial consultant to if figures need to be verified. Other than that, everything remained the same.
All right, question on page 22. Councilmember Friedman.
Thank you, Councilman Scanlon. Okay, so I have, and I was asking Councilwoman Riley a question, and so I apologize if this was addressed, but I'm looking at the professional services line. So I've noticed a couple of things. First of all, there's a significant increase from 2022 to 2023. And I guess I assume that's due to the addition of the commercial
Correct.
consultants.
Correct.
Okay. And my other question is the other line under there is for board members. Which board is that?
It's the
Forgive me.
bar, the board assessment review, that they oversee the formal grievance.
Okay. And that's members of the community. Okay. And again, this is maybe the thing that you were talking about. Can you just explain why now we're adding the commercial consultants under the professional services?
Because there's new projects coming down the pipe, and sometimes it might be good to have a second opinion on, especially with searcheries and negotiation with commercial.
And that was something that we previously did not do.
Correct, but I also had a full-time tax aide, a second full-time, which I reduced and turned it into a part-time for 2023.
In Terry's evaluation of the department, since she's been here, they had two full-time people along with Terry. She felt after one person was no longer with us, that it was better suited to bring in a half-time person and move this money into a consultant to assist her on commercial properties, whereas the tax aid were not as much helpful to her in that area. So it's really her way of figuring out how to run the department to the best for the city.
Right, okay, so essentially that is, in a way, you can look at it as it's moved from personal services,
Yes,
kind of,
it's a
okay,
wash. It was the dollar value was the same.
gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Other questions on page 22? Councilmember Riley.
Thank you. So again, just to clarify, we saw an across the city increase on board representatives stipend to $575. Was that not what we just clarified?
This is a little different than that. Okay, these people come in for, I think, 3 straight days to go through the hearings and they're pretty much gone.
Then they're done.
Yeah, where
So-
the other people are on here for a whole year.
Okay, so anything that meets annually has been bumped to $575. All other boards may not see that increase.
I think this is the only board that's not been increased. The other ones meet monthly and for,
Okay. And you understand why we have this question, because this is the first time we
Right.
heard about this increase for any group. So, thank you.
Other questions on page 22?
the other aspect that Terry just, these people on this board get paid for an hour on an hourly basis.
$400 equals their annually participation rate.
Well, it's the
It's
amount,
estimated.
it's estimated depending on how many hours they have to do it, because it's very conducive to how many grievances we get in and how
Okay.
long they take.
So they may not receive 400 per
Correct.
participant.
Because they're paid hourly.
Thank you.
Other questions on page 22? All right, let's move to page 213 through 217.
Now we're going to go over the appendix A. 213, page 213. The mayor suggested that we would like to add this chart to the budget because it shows very clearly on the status of pilots for the city of Binghamton. And I met with the IDA and we went over every spreadsheet to make sure that these are the best estimate of payment for the upcoming 2023 budget year. So we know how much money is coming in from the pilots. And due to his suggestions, I added what we think might be the term ending date in the actual street address of these pilots. So it's more clear and it's more as being transparent. So that chart, thanks to the mayor, Derek, he suggested doing it and I was happy to accommodate and do the figures for him.
The numbers used to be yearly in the revenue side and list all the properties and the amounts. This just has more data to clarify it for everybody. I will say on page 213, there is a thing that has to be modified. It says save right. It's really save around. We'll make that correction.
As you can tell, I go by address. The next part of the appendix is 214 and 215. It is actually the generated exemption impact quote that we have to put into the budget each year from my system. And what I did with this report that's generated from the RPS system, I put it in a tabulary chart on the next page, 216, which will give you a better idea how the exemptions are broken down and how much it impacts the city. And the last page is, I thought it'd be nice to put a little color in the budget and add a pie chart so you can visually see how much of a chunk of the exemptions do take away from the taxable value of the whole municipality.
So the correction for save right to save around is that's not a monetary expenditure. Council doesn't need to vote to amend that. We can make that correction in the final print.
Here, I appreciate the color pie chart, but I'm not sure I want to see that. Thank you. Any other questions on page 213 to 217? I'll take a motion to accept page 1, page 22, page 213 through 217.
I move that we accept pages 122, 213 through 217.
Second.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. Let's open page 77 and 78 with Ms. Gloss. So please highlight the changes in your budget, if you could.
So not too many significant changes in the budget. We've made minor adjustments across the board, removing and adding as we saw expenditures come in throughout the year. So the biggest change you'll see is the increase in travel and training. Obviously, during COVID, we weren't doing as much traveling, so we didn't need as much money in that line. Also, as I started this year, my staff was not doing as much travel and training before there was a new director on, so that's the largest change. We tried to make adjustments to dues and memberships to decrease that to account for the fact we were increasing other lines. And then we tried to break out the promotions and marketing more specifically so you could see where all of those funds were going. So there's been a slight increase as we added a music license that we are legally required to pay as we have events in our parks and public spaces that play covers of music that are covered under certain licensing agreements. So those are the major changes, but happy to take any questions.
Any questions on page 77 and 78? Councilmember Friedman.
Thank you, Councilman Scanlon. Hi, Sarah, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. What is the other line under dues and memberships?
So that's just giving us flexibility throughout the year. As this was my first year, we identified specifically International Economic Development Council and Main Street America as two we would like to add, but wanted to have a little bit of flexibility, especially this year, given that I wasn't involved in the budget process last year. There were a number of expenses that came up that weren't anticipated. So it's giving us a little bit of flexibility in that budget in case any of these numbers aren't exactly the same as they were in previous years.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions on page 77 and 78? Councilmember Riley, please.
Thank you again. Hello, how are you?
How are you?
Good. So again, you talked about your entire team being able to travel for for workshops and training. However, it's only as one person traveling with 3,000. Are we then incorporating them into that one line for travel?
Right. So we have not identified which specific travel opportunities we're going to take for 2023 yet. So right now it's just as one lump sum that will allow us to pull as needed. Additionally, with changes in airfare and mileage, we wanted to be flexible with that. So it's one $3,000 lump sum, but throughout the year, we're hoping to be able to identify specific travel and training opportunities we would want to repeat and then be able to break that out more specifically in future budgets.
Thank you.
Any other questions on page 77 and 78? Thank you.
Yep.
And I'll take a motion to pass page 77 and 78.
Motion passed pages 77, 78.
Need a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you very much. All right, let's open page 101 for Mr. Carson.
Good evening.
Good evening. Hi, Steve.
Hey.
For the
Okay.
highlight part of your budget, please.
Okay, so this still sort of basically stands as it always has been, where we're a department who basically moves funds through our department and doesn't really use them internally. Personnel services are essentially the same, other than for standard increases. Overtime has been reduced a little bit, just as a emergency need. Other than that, the only thing that might look a little weird is we had temporary services before. That was for paying for Paul Nelson to assist with the COVID recovery funds, I believe. The A8686 affordable housing line of 80,000, I think that was a financial thing. It really wasn't anything within our department that was handled directly by us.
There was an ARPA.
Oh, that was ARPA. Okay, so that was ARPA. Okay. But other than that, pretty much the same as we always do. We did have a lot of money in the previous year for legal ads and advertising, but that included all the COVID funds, all the amendments to the action plans. We have a few more additional amendments to the action plan we're expecting. But other than that, it will be same as normal.
Questions on page 101. Councilmember Friedman.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman Scanlon. Hi, Steve. How are you?
I'm doing all right.
Can you explain why there are two ARPA lines for affordable housing at the bottom?
I'll explain that.
Okay.
We originally set it up, it was gonna be a grant, but we moved it to a specific account number when we did it. You look back at your legislation, you'll see that the number that was approved was the 54756.
That was in expectation of the grant?
Yes.
Okay. And then, so then why was the second line added, the 555?
The 55555 was put in first before any legislation came.
As a
down.
placeholder?
Yes, yes.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Other questions on page 101? I'll take a motion to accept page 101.
Motion to move page 101.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you, Mr. Carson.
Thank you.
And then Ms. Voorhees, that's open page 19 and 20, please.
I'll introduce Jen Voorhees. She's city's new treasurer. I think she started about 4 months ago, maybe. Less than that. So she went through and did the budget, but we'll help her if she has questions.
Welcome. Just go over the highlighted part of the budget, please, if you could.
So personnel services, $173.38. That includes 2 account clerks and a principal clerk, as well as some added responsibility adjustments for 1 account clerk and the principal clerk. Office supplies, $5,377. Printing expenses, $1,134. That's for that page. Parking kiosk fees and services, $174,806.95. That includes I'm sorry.
The kiosk in the
Yeah.
parking ticket system is basically all the kiosk and the park, like when we issue parking tickets, we pay for the fees out of here in the professional service line. We have someone that collects money and use their system. That's what we pay him fee of what he collects.
And equipment repairs and maintenance, $250.
Question on page 19 and 20. Councilmember Friedman.
Thank you, Councilman Scanlon. Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm looking at the personnel services. So the responsibility adjustment is that a temporary increase that we're not? I guess,
So-
let me.
Speak to that, Chuck.
Okay.
So we have an employee out with a disability in the water department. It's due to a chronic illness. And as a result, we transitioned some of their responsibilities to the Treasury Office. The Office of Treasury actually used to handle those responsibilities many years ago. And ideally, this transition will continue for the remainder of the year. Likely if the employee returns, they will not be returning to perform those functions.
Okay.
And
so-
if you wanted any more detail, we'd have to go into exec session.
Okay. Can I ask a question that I don't think
Of
would
course, yeah, if it
necessitate
has to
an
do with the
executive-
functions, we can speak to that.
Yeah, no, I was wondering, so I guess my question stems from the way that it's separated out. So I understand the responsibility adjustment because this is transferring responsibilities. So I guess my question is, are we anticipating that this will be a temporary adjustment and therefore that's why it's separated out instead of just included in the,
In their base
in
pay.
the, yeah, exactly.
For this year, it's still a temporary adjustment as there's been no both.
Okay,
And so their titles are civil service.
okay, so it's separate until we know
Incorporate them.
definitively otherwise.
Correct. The city's under
Okay.
general obligations when it comes to keeping positions open for a period of time, subject to reinstatement under civil service law. Therefore, this has to be considered temporary until that time has passed.
Okay, great, thank you.
No problem.
Other questions on page 19 and 20? I'll take a motion to accept page 19 and 20.
Move that we accept 19 and 20.
Need a second, please? All in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you very much. Okay, on to Mr. Lake, let's open page 29, 30, 220, and 224.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Starting at page 29. It's pretty much the same as last year. If you go down to overtime, you'll see there's an increase there. But it probably won't be an increase to the city. It's to cover our overtime and expenses until I can get reimbursed from the contractors. We've been aggressive this year at billing the contractors for the overtime. And it's starting to come in. So probably the next increase has to do with office supplies or plotter, and that's just an increase in cost for us. So I went from 2,500 to 3,500. And I think that's about it for page 29, unless you have some questions. It's pretty much the same.
Councilmember Friedman?
Thank you, Councilman Scanlon. Hi, Ron, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Okay, so I have a question about, there are 3 senior engineers and they're all at different rates of pay. Is there anything that differentiates those 3 positions, like in the job description or something that would necessitate them having 3 different
I
pay
believe
rates?
a lot of it is their years of service here.
Okay. So their job descriptions are the same, but someone who has been here for a longer time would get. paid.
Yeah, like
Okay,
40 years or 50 years.
fair enough.
Other questions on page 29 and 30? Councilmember Riley, please.
Thank you again. Hello there. How are you, Mr.
I'm
Lake?
good, thank you.
Good, good. And I'm looking at A 144054456, the general infrastructure improvement line. And I know we are budgeting what we budgeted previously, but if we look at the history of this line, we typically expend more than we budgeted. I know we can't project, but should we prepare for significant changes in this line?
We typically think that it's not going to be that much and we try to use other lines. But I suppose we could. I'm hoping that maybe this year we've got enough of those improvements made that we can get that down where it should be.
Now, so we do have a projection of what we're going to improve, or is this based upon an emergency plan?
This is generally an emergency.
Okay, this is simply emergencies, and we just happen to have a significant amount of emergencies. in
Yes, because under our street reconstruction program, we try to take care of all the infrastructure we think is going to need improvement when we do the streets.
Okay,
So this is just where it catches us off guard.
okay, thank you. And that would align with equipment repairs and maintenance too. There are not, the maintenance schedule we have,
Our equipment repairs and maintenance line there is just for our engineering plotter,
okay,
Just
but if
in-
there's an emergency
just in the
there,
office.
then we have to encumber additional funds as necessary.
Yes.
Okay. And we don't foresee anything.
No, because we're getting a brand new one. So
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Other question on page 29 and 30. Councilmember Friedman.
Thank you, Councilman Scanlon. I do have another question. Under the travel and training line, there appears to be a new training, the AutoCAD. Can you tell us a little more about that, please?
there was some training that was supposed to take place, and due to COVID, we didn't get that done. So I need to have them come in and do some annual training again.
Okay, so the other training line, the $3,750 is for which train? I actually realized that now. I didn't make a note, but I am curious about that. So there's one non-specified training line and then,
Right, and there's the AutoCAD one.
so they're both AutoCAD?
No. The other one would be training that we would go to as individuals.
Okay, and then the AutoCAD is a group training?
AutoCAD is usually a group training where we have them in-house.
Okay,
We usually do that in the wintertime. Lori, when we do it like every 3 or 4 weeks, every 3 or 4 years, we
We bring in a professional AutoCAD trainer to train them in the use of that software for the maps and the drawings that they need for their department. And since we haven't done it in a few years, it makes sense to do it next year and get it done, get everybody up to date. We have new staff. Let's get everybody trained on the newest software that we have.
okay, that,
it wasn't available during COVID either.
right, no, that makes sense. Okay, so I think I understand the differences there. Thank you for explaining that.
Other question on page 29 and 30? All right, Mr. Lake, let's move to page 220, please.
Page 220. You can see under the construction part for engineering. Those are the projects that we have planned out for 23. And the cost associated with those projects.
Question on page 220? Councilmember Friedman?
Thank you, Councilman Scanlon. So I see that there's a mill and pave line, and then there's also specific streets listed separately, like Glenwood, Maine to Clinton. I'm assuming that's a mill and pave street.
No, Glenwood is a total reconstruction.
Oh, I see.
Mill and pave is where if it needs just a couple things, like maybe it needs a new manhole or catch basin, or we need to fix a water valve, we'll do that. And then under the CHIPS program, we come in and do mill and pave.
Okay. And so mill and pave is as needed. There's not a list
There is a-
beforehand of,
There is a list.
Oh,
before
there
we
is.
start.
okay, I would love to see that if that's possible. Would you be able to send that list?
Okay.
Because that's one of the most common questions I get from constituents is when is my street gonna be repaved? So.
The answer is never.
I think what's important though, when you get this report is that this is an estimate and a plan. What happens over the winter will change those streets.
Yeah,
Mary Street.
What?
Mary Street, that can be done.
Yeah, that's gonna be done.
Snowplow. They milled it, but it hasn't been paved.
It's on the list. It'll get paid here shortly.
Councilmember Riley, please.
You, Council President. So just for my clarification, again, I asked Chuck about these bans every time. If we have a CHIP grant, the total in that line should equal the CHIP grant, right?
So if you look at mill and pave, we have a 2 million total.
Mm-hmm.
$800,000 is coming through borrowing.
Okay,
1.2 million is coming through
Through
the
CHIP.
CHIPS grant.
okay. Okay, got it. Okay, thank you for that clarification. So our net cost, though, should not be the money coming from CHIP.
The net cost is 2 million. Okay, but we're gonna get a $1.2 million grant. We have to pay for it first before we get reimbursed.
It's reimbursable.
Thank you.
Any other questions on page 220? All right, let's move to page 224, please, Ron.
Councilman Scanlon, before you do that, because
Yes.
I know this question will come up, just so everyone's very clear on this. In the 2023 budget, that I handed out a thing on how we're spending money for ARPA in the general fund. In the cap, yep, that's that. I sent it all to you earlier this afternoon. But in the capital projects, we have $1 million scheduled for the water and 1.5 for sewer repairs. It's not on the sheet. It's in the book here, okay? But what I gave you, what I sent to you today is what we're spending in general fund at 542,000, I think it is. On top of that is another 2.5. 1 million for water, 1.5 for sewer.
Chuck. Sorry. Isn't that on page 220?
220, yep.
Right.
There's a column that says ARPA funds.
Right. That's where it is.
Yep.
Okay, yeah. Other questions on page 220? All right, Ron, let's move to 224. Please.
224 is a list of fees. Most of them we have increased slightly because they haven't been increased in many years. And those fees don't even come close to what it takes to administer them. But it just, I think it was time to update them. We didn't up them very much.
Questions on page 224, Councilmember Riley.
Thank you again. I missed a part of what you said, Mr. Lake. We didn't, and it went out. It doesn't meet something you said right before at the beginning.
You said it didn't increase so much.
It didn't,
We didn't increase them
Didn't
much.
increase them.
They haven't been increased in many years.
and it doesn't even meet.
It doesn't meet the cost that it takes us to take care of it.
Okay.
Ron, should we look at those fees at some point to
Right.
increase?
Do you want to look at them?
I mean, not now, but should we look in the future to increase these fees? It makes sense if they haven't been increased in years.
And if it's not meeting our expenditures,
It would be, I think it would be tough to have fees that meet our expenditures.
oh,
I think the public expects us to do certain things without collecting full pay. But we can look at them anytime if you'd like to have a meeting or something.
Look at those. I know you can't get to the cost, but we should probably increase them. They haven't been touched in years.
All right,
This makes
but they
sense.
are increased some for this next year.
Any questions on page 224? I'll take a motion to accept page 29, 30, page 220 and 224.
Motion to accept pages 29 to 30, 220 and 224.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lake. Now we're on to Ms. Sorkin and page 28.
Good evening, everybody. It is my pleasure this evening to introduce you all to a new face. Beside me is Mr. Kent Drake Deese. He is the new Director of Personnel and Safety, and he started this past Monday. In addition to an industrious career in higher education, he most recently comes to us as the COVID-19 response manager at Binghamton University.
Welcome. Hey, welcome.
With that said, I'll move on to our budget. I'll give you the highlights with regards to the changes. You'll note the title changes from the prior year, the ones you actually approved this past 2022 calendar season at City Council, including the Civil Service Administrator and the Personnel and Civil Service Assistant. Both of those titles, as their management tested and based on CSEA increases, will receive raises for the 2023 year. I did hear a presentation in which there was some representation that all of the director salaries increased across all budgets. Certainly not so in the Department of Personnel, neither in 2022 nor in 2023. I'll move on to temporary services. There was an increase in what we would call emergency layoffs and vacancies. Part of this is because of the city's effort to consolidate where the money comes from when we have vacant positions and need to fill them with temporary workers. Some of those positions are high-level positions, some of them are lower, and sometimes we have people who are training, for example, in the Department of Treasury, to take over as treasurer while we have an active treasurer. That happened in the case of Jennifer. So this is an effort. The city has the resources in one identifiable place to cover those differences. The last major increase we have is in legal ads and advertising. Last time I was before you in 2022 on the budget, I no longer needed to of those no longer cost. With that said, have found some difficulty in recruiting high-level positions this year. For example, the Director of Personnel and Safety is one of those positions, and you've seen some others of those throughout this year. Therefore, we have spent money on ZipRecruiter, recruiting strategies, including screening, and that has taken some additional costs. We expect the city's recruitment costs and obstacles to be the same as many employers around our region. It is more and more difficult talent. Therefore, we've increased that amount accordingly by about, we budgeted $300 in 2022, and we've budgeted approximately $2,000 for 2023. We've expended that amount. We will have expended that amount by the end of the month. If you have any other questions on the budget, please let me know.
Questions on page 28. Councilmember Friedman.
Thank you, Councilman Scanlon. Welcome. Thank you for being here. I had a question on under the personnel services line. So I see civil service commissioners, which are 7-hour-a-day positions, but only budgeted for $2,000. Can you explain how that works?
Sure. Remember last time I talked about how the default for people who are on the city's payroll is 7 hours? And that includes members of city council. The civil service, that's for New York State retirement purposes and taxation purposes. The the city's civil service commissioners are a 3-member board. They meet once a month, and therefore they're recorded for the purposes of the budget as 7 hours. They do make track of their time for essentially the 3 months look back that New York State requires.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions?
I'm sorry. Any other question on page 28?
Motion to move to close page 28.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone
Thank you.
opposed? Thank you, Ms. Sorkin. And thank you. Welcome. Appreciate it. Yes,
thank you, Council Scanlon. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. It's not for Sharon, but I guess it's more for Lori and Chuck. When we were talking about the expenditures under our engineering, under Mr. Lake, these expenses are things we pay for. Who pays for a sign?
Which page are we talking about?
Let's go back to 224.
The fees?
Yes, the fee schedule, when he said, again, we don't want to cost our constituents. But when we look at these line items to redo a sidewalk, to buy a sign, that is the city, right? So the highlighted in yellow on 224. Who is responsible for paying such?
Well, it all depends.
But it's not the
I'm not-
constituent that was said.
The constituents sometimes pay for, and we pay for half their sidewalk and they pay for half.
Okay,
Okay, there's different plans.
for each line item has a different plan or payment process. Got it. Okay, so we would charge them. So when he said we don't want to charge our constituents, that's not necessarily. Oh, yeah, talking to the mic, so our people.
Sorry. Some are our constituents for the curb and sidewalk program, that 50/50 rebate program. Some of them are contractors for different projects that are going on.
Okay. And so if
That-
we were to adjust, we wouldn't want to place undue burden on those that are directly
Affected. And if it's contractors, then they're going to turn around and pass it on to
our
our
constituents.
constituents.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
and
That concludes-
Councilmember Friedman, please.
Thank you. I have a follow-up question. I'm wondering if, again, looking toward the future, we could change maybe not only the amount of the fee, but maybe the proportion. Like, I'm just speaking off the cuff here, but something like instead of a 50/50, it could be a higher fee, but a different, well, I guess now that I don't know, functionally that would make a difference, but if it could be more revenue generating, but not so high that it like turns people away. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. I'm not the math whiz, but I think maybe looking at something like that, like a creative way to where we can cover the cost without placing an undue burden on people.
I think the easiest thing for us to do is really bring it up with the mayor and with Ron and go through it with them. And instead of coming up with a percentage or a dollar, maybe, per foot or some mechanism that gives us more coverage. Okay, but I think it's something that we can have a dialogue with.
Councilmember Riley, please.
Thank you again, Councilmember Scanlon. So where are the funds encumbered for the sidewalk assistance program? Under what department?
Street reconstruction.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I take a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Move that we adjourn the meeting.
Second.
We're adjourned. Thank you.